Before we get started, I'd like you to think about a few questions. First, is there currently a way to quantify how difficult a club's season was? Second, is the road to winning a league title always the most difficult one? And third, how much are each club's points worth from, let's say, the 25-26 English Premier League season? Welcome to the Football Quant. I created this channel to share interesting ideas and explore complex topics within the world of football/soccer using data and statistics about players, clubs, leagues, and even nations from all around the world. So, if you're interested in how we can attempt to answer these three questions, grab a snack, something to drink, and let's dive right in. In part one of this project, we'll dive into the whys and hows, especially the reasonings behind the decisions that were made, as well as looking at the tables, formulas, and charts used to bring this idea of a dynamic, season-long, difficulty-based model to life. Let's start off with a little bit of story time. One Sunday morning, while sat on the couch watching a few EPL matches, I had a random thought. Why is it that if the last place club in the league gets a positive outcome, a win or a draw, against one of the top place clubs in the league, do they not earn more points? Intrinsically, the positive result already means so much more to a lower place club than a positive result would for a top place club. So, I asked myself another simple question. Why is the league structured like this? The easy answer would be simplicity. Gaining 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points for a loss is incredibly easy to track. But what about those matches that have a little more importance, especially to the fans? For example, in match week 28, Wolves were playing Aston Villa at the Molineux Stadium, their home grounds, and at the final whistle, Wolves had stunned Villa in a 2-0 victory. Not only was it first and foremost a derby match, but it was also only the second win of the season for the 20th place club in the league. And Aston Villa, on the other hand, were flying high, competing for a spot in one of the European competitions. This thought, it rattled around in my head for the next week or so until I finally came up with the concept of what we'll call a difficulty-weighted Premier League table. This would be an official dynamic table that compares each club's league placement, strength of opposition, and their results to reflect the value for each match, which would be summed into a total difficulty value for a club season. It would classify really as dynamic because every time a club's position changed or their opposition's position changed in the league, we could see this reflected in the outputted result tally. This would hopefully add some context to every league point that was accrued within a domestic league season and provide a suitable answer to maybe even question one from the beginning of the video. To really give this idea life, there were four main ideas that needed to be created. 1. The point system and how it applies to the variation of possible results. 2. The league table and how ranks would be assigned. 3. The data collection process and its formatting. And 4. The final difficulty table. I started off first creating the backbone of the project, a point system. The idea of 3-1-0, aka the traditional point system, was not going to be used outside of its application in an official Premier League table for the ranks of each club. But the philosophy of not losing points even after losing a match was going to remain consistent for this model. By far, this was the most complicated part of the project, experimenting with scoring systems that rewarded results based on the perceived difficulty of the match and didn't disproportionately help lower or higher ranked clubs was not a straightforward solution. However, after a few weeks or so of dabbling with various point schemes, the most balanced one seemed to be a point system with 3 factors. The first of the 3 factors, where most of the points would come from, will be referred to as the base points, where each club's placement from a closely modeled Premier League table would correspond to a whole number of points. First was worth 20, second being worth 19, third being worth 18, and so on down to 20th being worth only 1 point. And here's the formula used to calculate the base points shown. To elaborate on both the formula and the table, since a club can't play a match against itself, if the ranks were the same, it would output 0 points, which, for any positive result, like a win or a draw, would flag as an error because earning a positive result had to come with some type of reward. If the ranks were different, of which they should be, that's where we can see the flat number of points prescribed to defeating an opponent at each rank. Along with the top row of the table is the league position of the club in question, and on the left side of the table is the league position of the opposition they faced. The second of the three factors were the upset points. The basis of this factor is grounded in the idea that any club that earned a positive result against another club placing higher in the table should earn extra points because they were most likely an underdog in the matchup. This factor embodies the idea that higher placed clubs or clubs striving to place higher in the league table should consistently win against the lower placed clubs, and if not, the lower placed clubs would earn extra for their positive result. For example, if the 12th place club got a result against the 9th place club, this would add an additional 1.5 points to their total difficulty value for that match. Shown are the formula and table used to calculate the upset points. It mirrors the same type of formatting like the base points, where same ranked clubs earn 0 points, and the rank of clubs in question is on the top row, and the rank of their opposition on the left. The third and final factor were the closeness points. To help reward the matches that were only separated by a few ranks, the closeness factor helped to balance the total number of points gained for clubs who played other clubs of similar difficulty. This was especially important, for example, in matchups like 10th versus 11th. If 10th won, it would only gain the base points, but if 11th won, it would gain both base and upset points. When tooling with the model, as a club changed positions in the league, their difficulty score would vary wildly without this factor, even if the change was only by one rank. So, here are the formula and table for the closeness points. The formatting follows suit of the previous two factors. This factor, however, was slightly more interesting to calculate, because points accrued from the closeness factor were scaled to be 20% of the difference of the ranks, then subtracted by the 20 possible ranks to obtain a linearly increasing value for each matchup. It was just enough to soften the fluctuations of a club who would experience changing positions in the league, but obviously matchups like 1st versus 20th, each club gained nearly 0 points. Now, with the final version of the difficulty point system drafted, it was time to get into the variation of possible results. In my mind, it was important to discern the difference in home versus away results, because home advantage is a real thing. It's been documented, especially in football, that reducing the stress of travel, increasing the familiarity of an athlete's routine, and maybe even some home referee bias, if even minimally, has a positive impact. For the inverse of these reasons are also why it's usually harder for clubs to earn a positive result in away matches. With this idea in mind, a reasonable, from what I believe, 25% increase was added to the base points for any positive result gained during away fixtures. The first culmination of all three factors, base, upset, and closeness points scoring we'll look at is in the results of a home win. Shown is the table and formula for home wins. With the same formatting as the individual factors, if 20th place won at home versus 17th place, they would earn 8.9 points toward their total tally. However, if 20th place won at home versus 3rd place, they would earn 27.1 points, a radically different sum of points to help accentuate the perceived difficulty of the match, bringing all three factors together for the first time. The same follows for the formula and table in the result of an away win, the only difference being the 25% added to the base points. If you scrub back and forth between the two, you can see the impact the added percentage of base points has on the overall difficulty point total. The second culmination of all three factors of point scoring we'll look at is for the result of a draw. A quick sidebar: in the traditional 3-1-0 scoring system, 3 points were awarded to one club for a win, while 2 total points are split between 2 clubs for a draw. This got me thinking about how much of value we should assign to a draw in this model, because the traditional system rewards 66% less per club and 33% less overall in the case of a draw. For this iteration of the project, I made an easy decision. Let's go for the middle ground between the two and award 50% the number of points for draws that were awarded for wins, in both cases of home and away results, and see what the model provides. This was one feature of the model that I have my eye on for adjustment in the future. With the point system and result variation completed, the second idea on the list was the league table. In the first few iterations, I wanted to find a way to combine points, goals for, and goal difference into a weighted formula to calculate a strength score for each club. However, This lost sight of the actual accomplishments of the club because any non-zero weights that I hoped could result in minimal impact would actually flip clubs multiple ranks in some cases because of their superior or inferior goal metrics. So, I settled on using something as close to the Premier League table as I could to preserve the accuracy of each club's ranks. The strength calculation on the right relies on 95% of the points scored and 5% of the goal difference. This follows directly with the Premier League's rules on tiebreakers for league position. So if a club is tied on points, the next deciding metric is the goal difference. I'll refer to these positions as the club's league positions throughout the rest of the video. The third item on the list was the data collection process, which, of course, was the most extensive. Since there are 380 matches in a Premier League season and both clubs' results were needed, I ended up with an Excel table of 760 entries as the final product. To accomplish this, data was manually entered after each match, which consisted of data about the match week number, the club in question, their opponent, which club was the home and away designation, and the result being win, loss, or draw. From there, each club's position was pulled from the league positions and ran through the formula below to find a number of points gained for that specific match. This master formula accounts for all possible result outcomes and keys in on the home and away designation to provide the correct number of points for the result of that unique match. The fourth and final item on the list was the final difficulty table. Considering every club's 38 match results, shown is the sorted table of their new difficulty-based rank, the total number of points accrued applying this difficulty model, their rank from the league positions, and the difference between both of their ranks. By highlighting those differences in ranks, we can get an idea on which clubs took the harder path to earn the league points they did during the 2025-26 English Premier League season. And as you can see, most of the clubs' positions between the two tables do not agree. Let's look, however, at some bar charts to help cap off this idea. First, I'll show the distribution of points from the league table, which does a good job visualizing the large point gaps, especially at the margins of the league. You can really see the drop-off in the number of points that Wolves and Burnley scored from the rest of their competition. You can also see the slowly rising point tallies that the top 5 to 6 positions have on the middle of the table. In my mind, it starts to look like the plot of a negative tangent of x divided by n function, where n is any value that's larger than 1. If you're curious what that looks like, here's an image for reference. Now, changing gears, when observing the bar chart for the difficulty table, there's still the existence of the visual similarities from that function on the bottom end of the rankings, but the top end looks much flatter compared to the other chart. What does stay the same are the 3 clubs that finished top 3 in the league, but each earn a new position now, and the race is much, much tighter this time. This result gives us the possible answer to question number 2 from the beginning of the video. Is the road to winning a league title always the most difficult? It seems that on the surface, maybe it wasn't, but that makes me wonder even more. How was it not the most difficult? Well, I guess you'll just have to check out part 2 to get those answers. I'd like to thank everyone for watching the video this far. It really means a lot to me that someone else has taken interest in this type of content. Keep in mind that this project is still in its infancy and probably needs to be tweaked a few times to even attain a functional version 1, but I would like to think that it holds some bit of value in modeling the difficulty of a club's season. With that said, in part 2, we'll dive into each club individually, analyze their results, and try to provide reasonings for why they place the same or differently between the 2 charts. We'll also look to formulate concrete answers to the 3 questions from the beginning of this video. If you would like to, hit the subscribe button to keep track of new videos, leave a like on this one, or drop a comment down below. I'm looking forward to reading the feedback and critiques that people have on ideas like this, and anyone that has their own ideas, feel free to share them below. I would love nothing more than the challenge to bring your ideas to light.